everyone. My name is Ryan Lee Tang. I'm the VP of Biz Dev for CLO Americas. Nice to meet you all. And then Sean, if you want to introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm a ex-VFX artist working at Marvelous Designer / CLO.
Cool. So today's talk is, Sean's going to kick us off talking about kind of like the features and stuff in MD with Unreal Engine. And I'm going to talk more about like the weird stuff that happens on the other side of the world of our company, which is the fashion industry. So I'll let Sean kick it off.
Welcome to you all. So as Ryan mentioned, I'm going to talk about the Marvelous Designer side, and he'll be talking more on the CLO side. As you may know, Marvelous Designer and Epic are collaborating to make our workflow between our two softwares work really well together. And I'm going to talk about these collaborations and some recent additions to Marvelous Designer that facilitate this. If you guys are not using the latest version of Marvelous or haven't used Marvelous, you obviously won't know about these yet. But so just a bit about me. I'm pretty new to Unreal Engine, but I'm learning lots and super excited with what I've been seeing in other projects, my own project and some friends' projects. I'm, like I mentioned, a VFX artist, and I'm most interested in the cinematic capacity of Unreal Engine. As most of you know, Unreal is increasingly being used in VFX all the time for a number of reasons. Real-time rendering, being able to see all your work together, move cameras around, lighting on the fly. I mean, these are like sort of like a dream for those of you who are in VFX making films or short films or working on films. Also just shocking how it can move around millions of polygons in real time is just, and textured and everything is just, it's making us all gradually, I think, moving into Unreal Engine. So Marvelous Designer has become the primary choice for fabric simulation, whether it's building. I'm going to talk a lot about the animation aspects of it as well in the film and gaming industries. I started with a company called, with Marvelous Designer, Oat Studios. I don't know if anyone's heard of them, but it was Blomkamp's little side project. We did a bunch of short films, and so my supervisor, he'd wanted to do this for a while. He'd been in VFX for many years, and so he's like, I want you to be the one that clothes all of our digidoubles. And so I started doing that, and then he's like, you know what? The team's small enough. I want you to just simulate everything using Marvelous Designer, do some tests. And I'm like, okay. And it worked out awesome. In one short film we did, there was 100 shots that needed to be simulated. I did that all by myself in a month, which is, you know, with the kickbacks and everything, which is crazy. Actually, is anyone here in CFX or VFX? Yeah, you got a couple here? Okay, cool. I'm guessing you're probably gonna ask questions later. Just a couple projects I did. So that Oat Studios, I worked on Mulan as well. This was part of a team, but some of the shots, we were having difficulty getting the cloth to behave naturally and to look realistic. And so I was working on another project, and I got pulled onto it, and very quickly, like Marvelous Designer is so quick to quickly get results out to the soups, etc. And they ended up using some of my simulations straight from Marvelous Designer, and the guy's like, finally, it looks like cloth. There's not as much ways to fake things, but what's awesome about Marvelous Designer is it's super realistic, and a lot of times just a couple iterations and they were happy with my work. I also did another fun project in The Mandalorian season 2, I believe. There's the frog lady as they're running away from the ice spiders, and so I built the costume in Marvelous for that, and then they wanted me to simulate it as well. And so she's real until she turns starts jumping, and then it's CG from that point on. And the cloth was just like flipping up over her head and just moving all over the place. And one of the guys like, oh, that's not how I would art direct it. But the supervisor was like, but that's how it would really look. And so they went with that, and they were really happy with it. It was a really fun project. As I mentioned, Marvelous Designers used primarily for clothes, but also can be used for other things. Like this is a tent I did. So this is a project we did in-house. I'll show you it in a minute. CLO focuses on helping fashion companies design and create clothes for the real world. Marvelous is obviously much more focused for CG and games. And I really want to personally demonstrate its uses other than, other members of our team are doing that as well, but other than just garments. Okay, so this is the project. So these are the other places. So the tent is done in Marvelous. This character's garments are simulated. The bags are completely done in Marvelous Designer, and the avatar is moving them as he goes through. You can see the wind pick up as he steps outside of the tent. Many parameters are animatable in Marvelous, not just that. There's those hoses on his face were also done. Those hoses from the oil derrick. This Zeppelin had more stuff done, but I ended up just going with the skin on it. Those plants are Marvelous. The wings on the ferry, of course, her dress, all of them simulated and built in Marvelous. This fish. So the fins were done, and as well as the seaweed. If anyone's ever done it, like the point count on that seaweed's ridiculous, and it just naturally flowed through, messing around with the simulation properties to get it to look like it's underwater. And lastly, those wings. I like to say Marvelous Designer is, it's a small program in the sense it just focuses on cloth, but in my opinion, it does it the best, and it's relatively easy to pick up, and we're the best. This is just an example. I simulated this, and then I brought the elements into Unreal, and I just wanted to show you it here. I just exported this as Alembics for this because I had done a bunch of stuff after, and I'm going to show you a little bit later on how you can just go directly from Marvelous and not stop on the way through Maya or whatever it is, your main program you're using besides Marvelous or Unreal. Lastly, I want to show you, not lastly, but next I want to show you this project, much more advanced than that one, of, I don't know if anyone's heard of Half Empty Studios. They are with Noman. They're resident artists there, and they are, it's not playing here. Oh, here we go. We'll just watch for a bit here. So this is a two-person team called Half Empty Studios, Tran Ma and Miguel Ortega. Hope I said his name right. No, I'm sorry. I would encourage anyone wanting to create cinematics in Unreal Engine to at least follow along a little bit with their live streams. I doubt you're gonna have, everyone's gonna have time. There's 62 sessions so far and they all are 2 hours each. But as you can see, so this little character, everything's done in cloth. Marvelous Designer is used all over the place. The walls, the characters, the whole environment. There's a moth that's obviously they eat cloth, so that's the enemy. Oh yeah, here they are just to show. This is one of the last streams, and they're lighting on the fly, and they can play around with lighting. You know, this is something that would generally take quite a bit of work to do, and you can't work like this any other way than with Unreal, which is awesome, which is why I'm so excited about it. This is just a quick video showing you, oh, I guess I gotta play it. There we go. Just showing you how a garment can be modeled very quickly for those of you new to Marvelous. This is just one tool of many, but starting with a default t-shirt, I'm just quickly here editing it and turning it into a dress. On the right is the 2D pattern window, which is like the cutting table for a seamstress or tailor. And as it's being edited in the 3D window, it's happening on the side. You can, of course, work back and forth. And because patterns are all made of cloth things, so everything's perfectly flat, all of our UVs are perfect. Here you can arrange the UVs separately from the 2D pattern window. Having come from a modeler background, being able to model like this is amazing. Here is showing how you can change the detail. Got some new advances to our retopology to go from triangles to quads. Here I'm taking the sewing off to show you we have buttons and zippers that actually work just like they would in the real world, which show your CFX supervisor something like this and they'll be like, what? Which is what happened to me a few times. Yeah, and then, you can also change the point count of those buttons, or you can bring in your own. They're called trims. And so you know, most of the time you'd obviously be bringing in something custom from the modelers. I think that's it for that video. Okay, so there's two main features that came out for our 2024 releases. We're just about ready to start 2024.2 with some additional stuff, but these are our two main features from 2024 that reinforce our integration with Unreal. There's a LiveSync plugin and use of the USD file format. LiveSync is aimed at simplifying import and export process between the two programs. It's essentially a one-button click back and forth once you're ready. Geometry, materials, skeletal animations, geometry caches can all be imported back and forth. With the USD, you can export fabric settings, cloth thickness, simulation data that can be used with the Unreal's 5.4 Chaos Cloth upgrades. So LiveSync basically instantly brings garments back and forth, or from MD to MD. MD is Marvelous Designer. We haven't, whatever, to UE or vice versa. Also, metahumans can be brought into Marvelous, dressed, and sent back. So here is LiveSync being used. So first of all, the Lily was built and animated here in Marvelous. And then with the LiveSync plugin, it's brought in, exported as a geometry cache because I want the animation, obviously. And then using it here to set dress the scene. And then just probably shouldn't have been moving the camera around that much, but you get the idea. Okay. Okay, and then here's the reverse going from Unreal into Marvelous using a MetaHuman. You don't just have to use a MetaHuman, obviously. So here, just showing it, there's some animation, very simple animation done on the MetaHuman, if it gets to it here, and then exporting it. So yeah, there it is in the LiveSync, and then here we go. And then exporting it straight into Marvelous as a skeletal animation. And so here it goes just with the one button click again. There's the animation. And now that the MetaHuman is here, it can be clothed in Marvelous really quickly and simulated, and then of course sent back again, which is really fun. So here is the USD workflow. If you want to use the Unreal Engine's physics for real-time fabric rather than just bringing in the caches, this is a better workflow for you. Just a little bit about the fabrics and the physics. The fabrics with different physical properties will behave differently. Everything's based on real world. It's all been dialed in. So you've got cotton will act like cotton, silk will act like silk, leather will be stiff and act like leather, etc. And all of these settings, which are set in Marvelous, can be transferred directly to the Chaos Cloth through the USD format into Unreal Engine. So as you can see on the right there are all of so there's 77 presets as I mentioned, but on the right there, those will all adjust, and you can of course create your own just by adjusting those. And then when you export this, you get all those settings. You don't have to go back and forth looking at them all. Usually, in most situations, I'm doing some editing on it, so it usually becomes a custom example. And then here's a little walkthrough of it in work. Here we go. So the garment simulation data can also be exported, like I mentioned, and used for setup. Using the cloth asset in Unreal Engine, we can import the USD file and transfer the skin weights to the simulation mesh. Here the weights can be painted in 2D or 3D. The 2D layout, which will show up in a second here. Yeah, there it is. The 2D layout will follow the exact same pattern laid out in Marvelous Designer. By default, the fabric settings are set to ingest the Marvelous Designer fabric parameters, but you can customize them, of course. And then here's a physics asset skeletal mesh used to preview the simulation and set up the self-collision. Collision values is in the USD file as well. And then lastly, we can parent the Chaos Cloth component to the MetaHuman body. It's moving really fast. And you can finally play test your level and see the Marvelous Designer garment simulate in real time. And I think that's it for me. Yep. So I'm going to pass this on to Ryan.
Is that mic on? Cool. Thanks, guys. By a show of hands, how many of you use Marvelous Designer? Okay, and then how many of you use CLO? I'll use both. That's fun. Is that because you guys are making your own clothes? And cool. So I've been working at this company now. This is the start of my 9th year at CLO. I had no 3D experience coming into this job. I also did not go to fashion school, so I don't know why they hired me. But I came in where the term 3D designer at the time for the fashion industry meant a very specific thing, someone who used 3D software in fashion. I do like to think that today it's changed a lot. The term now, it can be a 3D tech designer, a 3D pattern maker, a 3D designer. It can also be a renderer. Like the use case of why you actually need to use CLO has changed a lot as well. And so the big question that everyone always asks is, do I choose Marvelous Designer or do I choose CLO? And to understand the answer to that question, you actually have to understand why the two softwares even exist. And it comes back actually to everything in the world, which is workflow. So for those of you who use MD, you don't just use MD. MD is like one cool kid that you have in your toolbox, but you also use Unreal Engine, you use Maya, you use 3ds Max, you use all these different softwares and keep going. And this is just, you just need MD for Clot Sim. And so the software itself is set up that way where there's no built-in renderer because the goal is photorealistic render. And that's what you're trying to end up at. Whereas for CLO, it's a completely different thing. For those, how many of you actually work in the fashion industry here? There's a couple of you, cool. So for those who work in the fashion industry, you know that there is just CLO. And we had to put everything into that software and everyone, I always say that the user of MD is the one who says, don't bother me, I'm gonna go find the answer on Reddit. Whereas the CLO user will be like, how come you're not helping me and next to my desk at me at all times? And that is a key difference between why the softwares are built so differently, which is why we have a built-in renderer powered by V-Ray in CLO itself. And the difference also is that the goal is an accurate production sample. The render is beautiful, yes, it's great, but if it's not accurate and there's not an accurate pattern going with it and the seam allowance isn't done correctly, that 3D sample becomes useless because the physical sample will actually be incorrect. So this is a general video just to show, like for those who are not in the fashion industry, kind of what that workflow looks like. We have an ecosystem, a fun pun I made up a couple years ago. But in general, we start with something called Cosette, which is our own digital web-based platform. The ability to actually, create style guides, understanding like kind of creation and what you want to do, then going into CLO and actually make that possible. Choosing from fabrics, we now have a Connect marketplace where you can download fabrics, avatars, etc. This also works for MD as well. But being able to actually bring that into the software and then create something. And then when you're done, then communicate that back and forth and just use all those different assets. But I think a lot of times people think that creating in 3D in CLO, the main goal is, like I said, the photorealistic render, which is the goal of MD. But the difference is that in the real world, we actually need to be able to track all the different pieces that make a style, make a garment. So the bill of materials becomes very important, knowing what button you use, how much that button costs, the color of that button, the color of the fabric, the weight of the fabric, all these different things. And so you're seeing this workflow, which is really important, but what people forget about 3D is the really great thing is the metadata. The ability to actually leverage all the different things inside that 3D garment and make it come to life, but then you can actually now track a 3D garment plus a physical garment. And so there's a lot of use cases that maybe the CGI VFX industry doesn't have to deal with, like, hey, can the vendor sample 4 styles and just see one pocket on the bias, two pockets matching, and they physically sample all these styles. And by the time they get it and they get the physical samples back and forth, they go, oh, we're out of time, we can't afford it anyways. And so that's why so many of you have shirts today with no pockets. On the flip side also is this conversation between designers and tech designers. A lot of times designers think that they know more than tech designers and can actually tell them how to do a cuff. So they say, no, it needs to be 3.5 inches. And tech designer, it's going to be really ugly, but I'll physically sample it just to tell you that you're wrong. Now you can tell them you're wrong in 3D without having to physically sample it. So a lot of times I also joke that 3D CLO itself creates empathy organically because you have no choice but to understand how everyone else is using the same software but differently. So while everyone asks what our goal is as a company, from day one, my goal has always been, how do we replace the sketch? The sketch itself, any drawing, and even for the visual effects industry understands that when you draw something, it's beautiful and it's artistry, and I totally understand that, but it means nothing in the real world. It still has to be translated to something physical. So a lot of times people are comparing 3D to a sketch. They don't realize that it's not the photorealism of it, but it's all that data that lives inside of it, the accuracy of it. And so as a company, we've realized that 3D itself has expanded so far into so many different divisions of the company. So not just designers using it from the get-go, but then pattern makers use it, tech designers, vendors are being onboarded. We ourselves value that if the software is easy enough to use, you should not have to hire 3D experts to use the software. People can use it within their industry. Constantly I go to companies and they go, how many people do I need to hire? I'm like, no, you just believe in your own team and invest in them. And so but that's only possible because we made the software easy enough to use for the fashion industry. But this is kind of shows you the pipeline of how far 3D has actually come in a quite short amount of time, I would say. And the difference also is the CGI VFX industry doesn't tend to like help. We would love to be more helpful. One of the things I came into the company, and one of the first things I said in my interview with our CEO was, I wanted to make the fashion industry more transparent. And a lot of times people can think that means many different things. People talk about sustainability, but I think there's a lot of greenwashing out there. But transparency to me really means like, if you share your process with us, we can tell you and advise the best process how to implement within your company. So this has shifted a lot of our jobs. For the close side, we have way more employees than the MD side because we are constantly on site at our clients. We're constantly asking them questions, looking at their vendors, onboarding all their networks, making quality standard guides. It's a very different scenario than the Marvelous Designer side. But I know Megan and Sean here would love to talk to all of you too if you wanted to be more transparent with them, because that is really what makes us different in our industry. So one of the biggest things also that we've realized over time is now that 3D has become so prevalent everywhere, you realize that 3D is no longer just a garment. It actually has become content. What you can do with that asset after is really important. So one of the first things we had to do was metaverse exporter technology. It is now called Everywhere. I was confused too. I don't know if you all are confused because I even work at this company and I thought it was a separate product, but it's not. It's built into our softwares. But there's multiple technologies that are built into it to make sure that you can automatically rig and fit things onto things even like a horse. And you're going to see the Rockettes here. But in general, this is kind of like the future of understanding that avatars are not just human shaped. So we had to find ways to be able to map automatically to those different shapes. And then once that's possible, we do have a Connect marketplace where you could either showcase your stuff, you could also sell it, but additionally, you can even just download other people's stuff if you want to start from existing blocks. We're trying to find more and more ways for people to get into the software easily and create without having to worry too much about patterns in the beginning. And some of you are familiar with these companies. Artifact is now owned by Nike. You have The Fabricant, DressX. They're all companies we've been working with for a very long time, working on NFTs and kind of blockchain technology. But we're really working on Connect to be a blockchain where you could actually track who the original creator of each 3D style is. Our goal is really to be able to protect the IP of the rights of the creator. So that's something that's also in the works just from our side. And I have tons of clients who are now using 3D renders on their website. For all of you, everyone here is wearing clothes, thank you. But for all of you who go shopping online, most of what you're seeing now are actually 3D renders on websites, but you don't even notice. These are ghost images that Joe Fresh does, especially for, you can see they're all on sale, but it's because it's the carryover styles, which means that they don't even physically sample these anymore. All they're doing is changing colors every season, and they do all of it in 3D. Additionally, Group Dynamite, for those Canadians, you can mix lifestyle imagery with ghost imagery. So people actually don't even know that this is all 3D as well. And Fanatics, one of our clients for a very long time, all the NHL, MLB, NBA jerseys as well, I think on their website are all 3D renders, which is pretty cool to look at. You can definitely tell this one's 3D, but that's kind of not the point. The point is that they don't have to take photo shoots anymore, which is really helpful. And then in March 2020, everyone's favorite time in the world, Puma was unable to get physical samples or physical people inside their office. So they hired The Fabricant, which at the time was a studio making stuff instead of NFTs, to build an entire editorial campaign for them. And I feel like this is a very fitting metaphor for March of 2020, this dystopian wasteland. But this is kind of showing that what can you do once you have a 3D asset? What else can you do with it? And this is really what we believe in the fashion industry. And all of you here who come from the other side of the industry, what can you do to help the fashion industry take it to the next level? Because most of them are not in that kind of space. And we also partner with Pixelpool, who we invested in, which is a company that can build entire storefronts. And we have plugins where you can definitely automatically go from CLO or MD straight into the store. It'll automatically create a folded version and on-hanger version. But once again, the metadata is what's important. Now that they can see how much money is on the floor, what fabric was used, what style is there, should I fold it? Should I hang it? What looks better? So people can build entire storefronts basically and also replace visual merchandising. And if this might be familiar to some of you, but this was back in, I think, 2017. Square Enix partnered with Louis Vuitton to create a campaign using the Final Fantasy characters. And I show this because a lot of times people think that, partnering the two industries together, gaming, visual effects, plus the fashion industry is so futuristic. But this is old. This is 2017. And now LVMH has an entire division just for metaverse and working with games like League of Legends. So I think they're around here somewhere, so you can go find them. But that kind of shows you that this is kind of already happening. It's not like a futuristic concept. Also, we got an Academy Award, which is pretty cool, for our contribution to the movie industry. That's Jaden, our founder, with his cool socks. But I'm really proud to work for this company, and I think it's a huge testament to all of you too. We are very user focused, and like I showed you, our softwares are built because of you, and that's why they are so different, because our users are so different. But hopefully, more and more what I'm hoping for in the future is that you guys can take the fashion industry forward into your worlds, because it's so complicated. All the those toolboxes you guys use, none of the fashion industry is using those. And so more and more I'm seeing that the fashion industry is starting to hire CGI people to make commercials and videos and animations and such. And then the CGI animation industry is hiring pattern makers because they want their styles to be more accurate. And that's coming more and more popular. But together we can realize the future. So thank you. And now it's time. We have 17 minutes to ask a lot of questions if you want.